Hey there, everyone. This is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Ben 10 Retrospectives. And today, we're going to be talking about what the episode that, according to the DVDs, is episode 17 of the original Ben 10 series, Gwen 10. And last week, I stated this was one of my favorite episodes, and it's mostly one of my favorite episodes just for what happens in it. And it's nothing really that big and important, but it's just kind of fun to watch, and just by the name itself, you can probably tell what it is. So yeah, I might as well just get into the summary. So, in the episode, Ben wakes up one morning. It looks like it's just a normal it's like any other normal day. Ben is just Ben is just Ben, Gwen, and Max are just stopping at a gas station. They're fueling up the rust bucket, but while they're there, the place gets robbed. So Ben, being Ben, he's ready to go in and save everyone. But then when he tries to slap down his wrist and go hero, he finds that the Omnitrix isn't there. And Ben manages to get away from the robbers well because Max comes in and saves his life. But when Ben starts searching the RV, he can't find the Omnitrix. And when he tries questioning Gwen and Max about it, they just are clueless and don't know what he's talking about. And we quickly find out that Ben ultimately discovers that he has somehow been sent back in time to the very first day of summer vacation, and as such, he's reliving it all over again, though some details are a little different. So, at first, when Ben discovers his knowledge, he thinks, well, all I need to do is just find the Omnitrix again, and everything's going to go back to the way it was, regardless if I can go back to my time or not. But when the Omnitrix crashes to Earth, Ben runs out to get it, he finds that he's not the first one to find it, and as the episode title states, it's Gwen that finds it first. And, which, honestly, I don't really understand how she was able to find it first, because the previous scene, because before Ben finds the Omnitrix, Max gets them to the campsite, and after Ben and Gwen winds up going into the RV to get some rest, and now she's somehow wound up at the other end of the forest. I don't know. But Ben is, of course, noticeably mad, but Gwen is just naturally curious about the Omnitrix, and she activates it and transforms into her own version of Heat Blast, which isn't. And at this point, I think she does believe Ben about his whole time travel story and about the Omnitrix, because at this point, when you have a strange alien watch, you can pretty much believe anything. But Ben decided she's just messing around with it. She's using some Heat Blast powers, and unlike Ben, she manages to not set the forest on fire. But during this, but then while Ben's messing with her by tricking her and turning her into gray matter, which is actually kind of funny. The drone from the first episode crash lands again, so Ben immediately knows gotta go to the campsite. It's gonna attack there first, so when they get there, Gwen's Diamond Head, and she ends up battling the thing, and Max, when at that end, Gwen manages to defeat it, but when Ben watches, it turns out that she's actually discovering more of her powers before or very early on, before Ben usually did, such as the fact that she can shoot projectiles as Diamond Head, and even when she was Heat Blast, she was able to spell her name out in the sky, which Ben admits he had not been able to do with Heat Blast for a month. So the next day, Ben is just even more jealous of Gwen because she's continually using the Omnitrix for remedial tasks, and to prove, and as such, they go to a bowling alley. Gwen shows them up, but while they're there, it turns out that there is another large detail that's different between this version of events and the version Ben knows, namely that Vilgax was not injured, or was not heavily injured, like in season 1. In this case, while in season 1, the main difference is that in season 1, when Vilgax was attacking the ship that was carrying the Omnitrix, the reason the ship was destroyed and then Vilgax got injured was that the ship carrying the Omnitrix shot at Vilgax's ship and hit a point that wound up hitting a point that destroyed the room Vilgax is in, severely injuring him. And then Vilgax's ship retaliated by destroying it. But in this version of events, that instead of them shooting each other, the ship carrying the Omnitrix it went into self-destruction mode. And while it did hit that same room, because it wasn't a blast, Vilgax was just covered in rubble, so he's completely fine. So as such, after the first drone was destroyed, Vilgax immediately goes down. He's not hurt. He's not in his muscly state, and so he takes Gwen, and when Max comes in, and at this point he is very willing to listen to Ben. He knows that Ben knows about his plumber history, so they go out to save Gwen. Gwen is terrified, but Max gets onto Vilgax's ship. Somehow has a laser he got from Mount Rushmore, which I really have no idea when they stopped there. So, yeah, if someone willing to explain, I'd be happy to see that. But Max tries fighting Vilgax. It looks like, but Ben shoots Vilgax with the laser. But then it winds up causing a power surge, which hits Gwen, which which actually is able enough to get the Omnitrix off of her wrist, and instead of winding up on Ben's wrist, it gets on Max's, and Ben is, of course, is peeved because that was supposed to be his destiny, but Max pretty much gives him the lesson of the evening that Ben didn't need the Omnitrix to be the hero here, and so Max merges with the Rust Bucket. They leave the ship because it's losing power and it's gonna crash. Vilgax gets blasted back into the ship, and the episode pretty much ends without Ben getting the Omnitrix, but it's not really an effect on anything because even at the beginning, because it's pretty much stated in the beginning of the end of the episode that it's non-canon So, yeah, I just spoiled the episode rotten like I usually do. So, what do I like about it? Well, for one thing, again, I kind of just like what if episodes because I'm a big alternate universe, but I like alternate continuities in comics and in fiction. Just like seeing a different version of events play out and just seeing how things can be differently. Which was one of the and that's actually kind of one of the reasons why I actually liked the multiple Ben arc in Omniverse, because they actually did have fun with that, and we got to see different ways that it went. And this is technically the first time they did that. In this case, Ben has somehow gone back in time, which they never really give an explanation for how it happened, but it's not really something that's but it's not really that's not really the point of the episode. It's in this case it's just kind of to show the what if. And in this case, it's just kind of the framing device for seeing Gwen with the Omnitrix, and they do show that some things are different because and while Gwen does make some mistakes with the Omnitrix and she's not immediately good at everything, they do show that because she is actually a little smarter than Ben, she actually catches on to things much more quickly, which actually kind of which actually kind of makes things worse for Ben, which is another thing I like, that this is kind of the point, also a lesson of the episode. Like, Ben has to learn to accept that he doesn't have that. Ben has to learn that he's not. I like that Ben has to. Sorry, I'm stuttering. That I like that Ben has now been reduced to the role of sidekick, so to speak. That's like during the first season, Ben was just always the one kicking butt while Gwen and Max usually did cleanup. And now in this case, he's been reduced to the cleanup officer. He's been reduced to cleanup with Max while Gwen goes and does everything. So it's just kind of nice seeing his reaction to it, and I do like that he does miss it. That he is, and I kind of like some of the hypocrisy in some of his statements, like when Ben went, like the very first, because he's like when Gwen first turns into Heat Blast, she starts messing around with her powers. Ben says, "Careful, you're gonna start a forest fire," and Gwen, being her usual self, says only an idiot would do that, which it's funny because you can probably because Ben did it, and at that point he's even and then later on Ben's chastising Gwen about using the Omnitrix for remedial tasks, even though he's used the Omnitrix for stuff almost like what Gwen did. But I think it also kind of helps. But I think the reason that Ben's doing this is because it's just sort of him trying to cope with the fact that he's not the hero anymore. Which I think also feeds into the story, because at one point Ben says that he's jealous that he'll never have his powers again, and that Gwen is actually better than him, because she's picking up on stuff more quicker than Ben did. And I also And I do like the overall the ending message that Ben doesn't need the Omnitrix to be a hero. That he doesn't need to be that, despite the fact that he's just a bit that despite the fact that he doesn't have the Omnitrix anymore, he can still do some good. He can still do good. It's just not in the same place, which I do like. And I think that's one of the reasons why they don't give Ben the Omnitrix back by the end of the episode, because if they did, it would sort of cancel out the lesson. And that's kind of another thing that I like, just seeing the other versions of the aliens, which I brought this up in my vlog for the side effects episode, where when Ben gets sick, his aliens wind up getting affected, and in this episode, it's the same way. This kind of confirms what my theory wasn't what I said in that one, that the physical state of the Omnitrix bearer also affects what the aliens will be. And in this episode, that's exactly what happens. When Gwen is wearing the Omnitrix, all of her aliens, well, obviously the same aliens, they are not Ben's. Like, her version of Heat Blast is more feminine, taller, has a few more curves, which is weird considering that it's supposed to be a 10-year-old girl. Her gray matter looks like her. Her diamond head doesn't look as bulky, and her head is a little smoother, and again, her version of forms just looks like, has her hairdo, her clothes, and so forth. It's just, it's a nice. It just further proves that all the aliens are unique. That all the aliens look as unique as their wearer is. So it just kind of is nice. It's kind of nice to see that, and I like how they integrated the aliens with Gwen's, the way they integrated Gwen's design into the aliens, which I think is really nice. And I don't really know if I should talk about when Max went alien, because at the end of the episode he goes upgrade to merge with the RV to get him, Ben, and Gwen off of Vilgax's ship. And I think aside from being just slightly bigger, I don't really think there's much difference in their looks. So I think that's kind of really I think that's really it. I think in the end, I think what makes this episode, I just think it's a nice little what if episode, which I think is really nice, because I like a what if episode. I like what ifs and so forth, and I like the design. I like the message, and I like the design of the aliens. I just think it's a fine episode. I don't think it's like the greatest episode in the series, because I do have more episodes that are more up on my favorites list, like Kevin 11, which I said before, but I think it's just as a what if, and showing what would happen if Gwen had found the Omnitrix instead of Ben. I think it would be nice. I think it's just a nice little. I think it's nice. I just like it. I like that we get more. We get to see more of how the Omnitrix works with seeing Gwen's versions of the aliens, and I do like the lesson which actually is sort of revisited later on in the series, which not to the same degree or in the same way, but I like that. I kind of like that even just kind of how personal it is with Ben, watching on the sidelines. So yeah, overall, I think it's a fine episode. Still one of my favorites. Probably not one of the best episodes, but I still think as a what if, I think it's still not. I think it still holds up well. So I think it's really all I have to say. So yeah. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and tune in next week where we look at episode 18 of the original Ben 10 series. So, yeah, again, I'm Sam Johnson. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you then. Take care.